Morning folks, from a very blustery country of Ireland. I've had this bike now for 6 months, so if you want to find out what I do and don't like, well then hop on the back and we'll go for a spin. Now just before I get into the review itself, we'll just get past these two walkers. It's still fairly early on a Sunday morning. Not many people will be expecting a motorbike coming up behind them. And in fact these two people definitely don't, which makes me segue lovely into my first point. If there was anything I was going to change about this bike, I would probably get a pair of slip-on cans just to make that exhaust note a little bit louder, and therefore it would allow pedestrians, just as you've seen, to be aware of the bike behind them. But actually that's not the real reason. I think this bike looks absolutely incredible. I'll come on to that in a minute. The only thing which lets down its looks is the growl of the exhaust, which is lacking, to say the least. I did note after owning this bike for a couple of months that the engine note did become a lot gruffer, if you like, a lot more in tune, in keeping with the way it looks. That cafe racer style, of course. So I'll have a think about it. I might get a pair of slip-ons. I've never been that materialistic, to be honest, about the sound of a motorbike. It's all about the looks for me, and this bike has the looks in bucket loads. But I just think, yeah, it could just finish off that cosmetic side of things if the sound matched the looks. So there you go, that's the first point out of the way. So last Sunday, I wish I had the camera with me actually, I went out for a little spin on this bike to a spot I know called Loch Rama in Virginia, County Cavan. There's a great little spot for an ice cream there. So I took the bike over, and lo and behold, because it was the first weekend lifting the restrictions after lockdown, there was about 30 other bikers there. So if you fancy a bike like this just for escapism, think again, because when I drove into the car park, I rode into the car park rather, I keep thinking I'm on a car, not a motorcycle. What am I talking about? That's sacrilege saying I drove this motorbike, I rode it. And so when I rode into the car park, yes, of course, every other biker in the car park wanted to come and find out about this bike. I was there for half an hour talking to everybody, and it was wonderful, it really was. But needless to say, I didn't get the ice cream. So I'm sure I'm owed a few at this stage. In fact, I kept in touch with two of the lads on Instagram since I met them last week, which is very nice. All part of their biking community. I can say out of all the motorbikes I've ever owned, I've never owned something which turns heads quite like this. Even when you pull into a filling station, the car drivers will want to come up and have a chat and find out about it. And I think it's part of, I mean, obviously everybody's synonymous with the brand Royal Enfield. So I don't know if it's the nostalgic side of things, because nearly everybody who comes to ask about the bike can't believe it's new. So, I don't know, maybe people think I've restored the bike and they want to find out more about me rather than the bike, in which case it's a huge letdown, because the bike is the brand new model, well, of 2020 is the brand new model. But I must look out for that reaction in their faces the next time people ask me if I've restored it myself. Yeah, in terms of looks, what a head turner, it's just incredible. And that's the other thing I like. As many of you know who follow my channel, I'm a little bit obsessed with cleaning motorcycles, and you have to be with a bike like this, well certainly in the Chrome edition. But it's an absolute amazing pleasure to clean this bike, because when she's dirty and you give her a good old clean and wax her up, she comes out looking like new every single time. And then of course when you look at a new bike, you just want to get back on it again and ride it. But yes, so my passion for motorbikes doesn't just stop with riding them. It does go way beyond that. I love cleaning them, and this is a very easy bike to clean as well, so it doesn't take too long. But when you wax her up, like I say, she just looks phenomenal. And I'm sure because she's always in tip-top condition, that also helps turn the heads. Now, again, I'm not that shallow. I'm not bothered if my bike gets attention from anybody. I really am not. If the bike does what it's supposed to do for me, that's all I'm bothered about. But nevertheless, it's still very nice when lots of people come and ask you about your motorbike. It does help you feel as though you made the right decision in choosing it. Rideability. You're never really in fairness going to buy a bike like this to go touring. But I sort of treat this bike as my Sunday best. Again, I'm fortunate enough to have a few motorcycles. I don't think I'd ever buy this motorcycle as an all-rounder. Well, I definitely wouldn't. So obviously, I don't believe there's one all-round bike. Well, actually, I was speaking to the Missenden Flyer recently, and himself and myself both agreed that we both own the closest to an all-round bike. If you want to know more about that, of course, log on to my channel, or subscribe to my channel and check out the interview I did with the Missenden Flyer. We both agreed on that. But back to this bike for a moment. Yes, I would never buy it to go touring. This little windscreen I bought as an add-on at the front, I have to say it does a really good job in deflecting the wind. I remember the bike before I put the add-ons, and I was getting buffeted a lot, and I think it was due to the airflow hitting the dials on the front there. I've just realised my full beam's on. Hitting the dials on the front there, and it was buffeting when it was coming up on me. However, that was only when I was doing 80 kilometres and above. I don't really go much faster than that on this bike, which brings me back to the point. I sort of treat this bike as my Sunday best. Remember when you were young, or maybe you didn't do this, but when you were young you always sort of put your best clothes on a Sunday. We'd always go and visit relations, and certainly since I've moved to Ireland, my wife and her family go to church. They'd all, put the best clothes on for church on a Sunday. Well, I like to keep this bike as my best looking bike for Sunday, my Sunday finest. The fuel range wouldn't be great. It's just over a 12 litre tank. I think it's about a 12.5 litre tank. But again, if you're using the bike for the same reasons that I'm using it for, or just to put a smile on your face in general, I don't really use the bike as a purpose to go anywhere. I use it just to, well, like I say, put a smile on my face. So the fuel tank, the range in the fuel tank is fine there, but 12.5 litres in a modern day fuel tank wouldn't be great at all. I've estimated in my sort of riding that I'm getting around 40 to 45 miles to the gallon, which again is standard for an engine of this size. It's a different style of riding on this. It does make you feel as though you've gone back in time, and that's another thing I love about the bike. It's actually very simple. It's got ABS alright, but that's about the fanciest of technology it has on it. It does have a fuel gauge, so that's something as well. I used to hate having to reset the odometer just to calculate how your fuel level was going. But the engine is, it's a very smooth engine, and proof of that is the buzziness. Now, as you can see, I've added the clip-on mirrors to the end, but in many ways you would probably see the vibration even more, because they're right on the end of the handle, the clip-on handlebars, and there's no vibration at all. In fact, these mirrors are brilliant. They are the Royal Enfield clip-on mirrors rather than a third party. The seat, however, talking of third-party add-ons, now you can see, well, I've made a video about it as well, you can see that I've customised this to my own liking, so I put a seat on as well. Now, the seat that I added, which isn't a Royal Enfield seat, I might add, it's a third-party from eBay, it wouldn't be great at all. In fact, I should have stuck with the stock seat which came with the bike, which was much more comfortable. And indeed, that's just spurred me on to thinking that I must put the stock seat back on and see if I can get some sort of cowl to go over the back of it, because the padding in this third-party add-on seat's just too thin. Now, what else do I want to talk about? The brakes. They're, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Bimbra brakes. They're absolutely perfect. Again, you wouldn't need big 4-pot monoblock calipers on a bike like this, in fairness. Okay, I'm just going to show you how the brakes work, well, the front brakes anyway. Just check nothing's behind me, and there's not. Here we go. Wow. Oh, God. I'll not tell you what I've just squashed and hurt considerably up against the fuel tank. Oh, didn't need that for a Sunday morning. Anyway, as you can see, the brakes work. Sorry if my voice might appear to have gone up an octave. Moving swiftly on! The tyres are the Pirelli Phantom Sports. They're okay, I'll be honest. I don't have a huge amount of confidence. I've been caught out in the wet only once or twice on this bike, and you can feel the front end going when you sort of lean it anywhere over 30 degrees into a wet corner. Just doesn't inspire great confidence, but then again, it's all about what you use the bike for. If I was that bothered about it, I'd change out the tyres, but I'm not going to do that because I use my bike for doing little spins like this. It's my happy bike. One of the other add-ons I did to this bike is these handlebar grips. They're called grip puppies. Somebody on my channel, one of my subscribers, put me onto these because I found the grips themselves were too thin or something. I don't know, I just didn't like the feel of them. So I put these grip puppies on, which I got from Amazon for very little money, and it softens up the grip, but it gives you a wider grip as well. I feel as though I have more control over the bars, if that makes sense. Riding position is almost like a sports touring position, but again, it's not a tourer and it's not a sports bike, so read into that how you will. It's just a very comfortable position. My legs are at 90, or my knees are at 90 degrees, which is lovely. And you know, I quite like the fact that I'm sort of leaning over a little bit. It really does fit into that cafe race style, which is of course what this bike is supposed to be. So therefore it should make you feel as though you're riding a cafe racer bike, and this definitely does that. Somebody asked me recently if this would make a good commuter bike, and the answer to that is yes, indeed it would. It'll be superb around towns. Just don't get this colour, because with the very nature of commuting, it means that you're going to be in all sorts of weather. And well, maybe you think differently to me, but I wouldn't put a bike, certainly a chrome bike, through a lot of bad weather, rain or anything like that. In fact, I've heard from our lovely friends over in India who have bought this bike, obviously in abundance, because that's where it's made, let's face it, that the bike has shown, after a year, the bike has shown spots of rust in spots like the end of the exhaust and underneath the seal on the fuel tank. It's shown signs of rust. So if that's happening in India, predominantly dry country, then that's probably the main reason I keep this bike indoors. I definitely don't want to see any spots of rust. But then again, harping back to my obsession with keeping bikes clean, and on that note, I also make sure they're all ACF 50'd as well. And again, you can see videos of all of that on my channel, so if you're not a subscriber, become a subscriber, and you can go through all the previous videos I've done with this bike and my others, including the mods, the cleaning, and basically just my general addiction to motorbikes. Alright, I think I'm gonna pull over the top of this hill, and again, you'll be familiar with this if you've followed me for a while. This little spot up here is a great spot for a little walk around. So without further ado, I'll switch the camera off until we arrive there. See you in a bit. So here she is in full glory. Honestly, I think she is one of the best looking bikes on the road. Definitely the best looking bike I've ever owned. And just to harp back to the head turning prowess of this bike, she is absolutely stunning. The suspension, albeit for a very affordable bike, it's got some nice touches. The suspension not only looks great with these gold pots on the back, but really works well as well, especially in the potholed roads around here in County Cavan. The suspension has to work pretty damn good, and it does that. Indeed, you wouldn't know the potholes you're going over. Very impressed by that. If you're wondering what this little lead is, by the way, sticking out underneath the seat, it's the trickle charging lead. So It's not a few wires which have accidentally come loose or anything like that. And there you can see this seat as well. I must explore the stock seat again, because this really isn't that comfortable at all. Even the little touches like the kick guards here to stop the scratches on the black paintwork. It's a really well thought out bike, really well made bike. I can't say that enough actually. Now, here we go, that beautiful black line down the fuel tank. Oh, I just love the styling of it. And indeed, when you're driving it, you probably can't get a great impression from my helmet cam anyway, because you can't really see the black line, because my GoPro's mainly facing forward when I'm riding. But when I look down at that, it just, again, makes me feel as though I'm riding a really beautifully designed and a fantastically made motorcycle. So that's it. There's not much more to add other than just look at it. Clocks are very simple, easy to read. As you can see, I've just gone over 522 miles. So this bike is going in next week for its 500-mile service. I think it's very easy to service. Actually, that segues nicely into my next point. It's very easy to look after this bike. Very simple servicing, because, well, there's just not much technology on it. So it's easy to look after. Once you've bought it, relatively cheap to keep. One of the downsides, and again, that's my fault, is because I chose the chrome head turning edition. In fact, yeah, Royal Enfield should think about rebranding it into the head turn edition, because I chose this particular colour scheme, and because of living where I live. Many of you will know, again, who follow me on my channel, is that I don't have a conventional garage on my house. I live in the Irish countryside on a farm, and so I have an old cow shed for my garage, which isn't great at all because it's full of moisture, condensation, and you know, after a night of rain the bikes are soaking. It's absolutely not great at all. So Mrs. Wheelie, if you like, allowed me just before last Christmas to bring the bike into the house, and I had it parked just at the bottom of the stairs. So every morning I would come downstairs, the first thing I would see was this bike. So not only was I able to keep it nice and dry and moisture free, she also put a huge big smile on my face before I even left the house to go to work. And let's face it, that's one of the main jobs of any motorcycle, isn't it? Indeed, when I took the bike out of the hall only 2 weeks ago now to start riding it for, well, hopefully the summer season is upon us, Mrs. Wheelie actually admitted she missed the bike in the hall. My God, what have I created? I never thought I'd ever hear her say that. Now, this is a woman who won't even get on a motorbike because, as she keeps telling me, she hates them. But for her to turn around and make a statement like that she actually missed the bike in the hall, I'll tell you what, lads, I'm conquering that wife after 20 years of marriage. Ah, yes. Who's wearing the trousers now? There's no gear indicator on it, but I actually quite like that in a weird sort of way, because it keeps you in tune with the bike. So when you're moseying about the country lanes and you take it above 4,000 revs, actually the bike starts coming alive then. Especially if you want to have a bit of fun around the twisties. Just drop the gear, keep her above 4,000 revs, and she does. It's like you've given her 2 Weetabix or something. It's an interesting power change. But then saying that, the bike is very smooth power delivery right throughout the range, but you can definitely have a bit more fun above 4,000 revs. Ah yes, I have just remembered one thing to make a comment about, and that's the weight. I was really quite surprised when I first brought her back from the shop and took her out for the first spin. She's 208 kilograms. Now, personally, I like a heavier bike rather than a lighter bike, and it all goes to make that feeling of the bike planted on the road, which I much prefer. And saying all that, the bike still is, you know, very flickable, especially around these country roads. But it doesn't feel as though it's going to take off on you, and it definitely doesn't feel as though the front wheel will ever lift anytime soon. But if you are parked in a tight parking space and you're having to manoeuvre the bike around, you're best doing that off the bike rather than trying to push it backwards when you're on the bike. It's that can catch you out, alright? So there you go, folks. That's my honest and transparent opinion of owning this fantastic bike for 6 months. Is she a keeper or a sleeper? She's a keeper, of course. As long as I'm fortunate enough to have other motorbikes in my collection, then this one will always be part of the collection. She has a very specific purpose for me. Its main purpose is to keep me smiling, and it does that job extremely well. Thanks once again for tuning in. Have a lovely day, folks, and I'm Dave Perry for Wheelie Good TV, over and out. Now I'm off home to get some breakfast because I can smell breakfast in the air from other people. I'm starving now.